Hey guys, Verbal Engine 95, recording live from your local county prison cell, and this fight is going to be a weird one. So, as you know, I like to use Pokemon as a palate cleanser, and I have really needed a palate cleanser since I've been updating all the thumbnails. It's a lot of work, but admittedly, it's, fun and gives me something to do, and it lets me rediscover, my love for some old matchups, but it also made me realize a lot of the matchups I hadn't done yet, and mainly the ones I haven't done have been because of the research or workload or awkwardness of them, and this is one of those. So, this is Golem from Monster Rancher, actually, versus Golem from Pokemon. And if anybody's wondering why I didn't use Golurk, you know why. Come on. But yeah, can't say I'm a big Monster Rancher fan. Not trying to show any bias, but I did have to do a little bit of research for this, and I'm still not entirely sure of what the hell I'm gonna say here. So, but I'll do my best. So, quick rules, Pokemon standard rules, wild Pokemon game mechanics have to be interpreted into a fight, not purely looked at as mechanics unless it's relevant. And Monster Rancher operates on a different kind of axis than Pokemon does, game mechanics wise. So trying to implement those into real life fights is going to be a little more difficult. And also, the Monster Rancher characters have a lot of different moves, so I'm gonna try, but most of them are just similar and under different names. So I'm gonna kind of pool them as a description rather than what the name of the move is. But yeah, anyway, and we're gonna use the generally accepted 1 through 3 Monster Rancher Golem rather than like the female humanoid Golem or the robot Golem or the ice Golem or the golden Golem or whatever the hell. They have a lot of them. And obviously, we're going to use Kanto Golem for Pokemon and not Alolan Golem. Anyway, so Golems are considered peaceful creatures. They're very strong. Golem from Monster Rancher. They're very, very strong, very, very durable. But they're generally pacifists. They don't, fight very much unless they're provoked, in which case they're incredibly dangerous. Golems have been known to one-shot lesser monsters. They've been known to widen the entrances of caves with punches. Yeah, they're giant collections of stone, so they're able to do things like separate their body, take pieces of themselves and throw them, and add them, take rocks from the ground and add them to their own body. But because they are kind of just a standard RPG tank, they're very, very high in attack power, very, very high in durability, but they're very slow, very inaccurate generally, in Golem's case. Golem from Monster Rancher again. And they're also very straightforward. They don't have a lot of stratagem or much of anything to their move pool. So, and that's reflective in Golem's move sets, because most of its moves are just punches, chops, kicks, jumping on you. It, like I said, can reassemble its body, so it can do things like kind of reassemble itself into sort of a ball and roll into you. It can do things like disassemble itself and create tornadoes. By the way, they can create tornadoes as well. That's fun. And kind of have like a debris tornado thing going on. It can throw pieces of itself at you, things like that. But that's really the end of it. The only other moves that I would say are noteworthy are the move Quake, where it stomps or sometimes punches the ground and creates a directed earthquake, and the move Belly Claw, which is its only real stat affecting move that I can find, where it just grabs you by the stomach and depletes some of your stamina. Note, stamina does not work like HP. That is a separate stat. Stamina, I guess, is more akin to I'd say it's more akin to power points, but that's actually what's referred to as cost in Monster Rancher. So stamina is like a tertiary stat that doesn't, I guess, have a direct correlation in Pokemon. But it is not draining health. That's a different thing. Yeah, but like I said, they're very peaceful creatures. But they're incredibly dangerous when provoked. Not much more to say about them. Like I said, very straightforward, very simple. The same could pretty much be said for the other Golem from Pokemon. Golem is the third evolutionary line, or the final stage evolution of Geodude. It's a rock ground type, which makes it weak to grass, water. It's actually neutral to ice, I believe. Does rock have neutral? Does rock have resistance to ice? I'm not sure. Weak to fighting, weak to ground, funny enough. I believe it's weak to steel due to the fact, because I think ground is neutral against steel. Like, steel is neutral against ground. But yeah. And its move pool is actually pretty on point as well. I mean, in addition to having things like tackle and harden and defense curl for, defensive and offensive capabilities that are very simple, it's actually got access to steel moves like heavy slam, which is really just it jumping on somebody, but it is also a steel type move considered. That checks the user's weight, which in Golem's case is 600 something pounds. So that's, generally a very very strong move. It's got things like rock throw, stealth rock, and stone edge, all of which are moves that, use rocks, but use them like they're not from its body. They're just naturally occurring rocks that it can create, pretty much. Stone edge, in that instance, has the rocks appear from underground. And stealth rock is it strategically placing sharp rocks in the environment for its opponents to step on. And then on the ground side of things, for the other half of its typing, it's got moves like bulldoze, which is a move where it creates a uneven roading it creates like an uneven ground on its opponent, reducing its speed. And it uses earthquake also, which is generally the most powerful, not the most powerful ground type move, but is generally the go-to powerful ground type move. And then in its final parts of its moveset, it knows self-destruct and explosion, which are two of the most powerful base attack moves in the game, but they do KO Golem itself, which is not an easy feat considering Golem has the ability Sturdy. I believe this is its primary ability. The ability Sturdy prevents it from being one-hit KO'd. So anything that would defeat it in one hit, it actually just barely survives, which is basically, in real life mechanics, would be a testament to its stamina, that it'll always hang on to that last bit of life to fight, right? Yeah, Golems are ridiculous to a fault, being able to survive high-powered dynamite blasts without taking any damage, as the Pokedex entry says. And it also says that when it'll use the move Explosion to jump up to blast it up mountains, and also blast it from one mountain to another. And like I said, it weighs over half a ton actually. So being able to blast it several hundred feet in the air in order to make it go on top of a mountain and surviving that, is a very high powered, it's a very high powered attack, something like Explosion. But yeah, Golem is also a defensive tank, physically defensive and offensive, right? I think it's got base 130 defense. Again, I'm just mentioning the stats for scaling. I'm not actually using the stats to compare the game mechanics of the two games. But yeah, it's the only problem is it is very slow, and this is something I will scale. I did have to explain this to somebody in the comments recently. You know who you are. Golem's base speed is 45. For reference, Cloyster's base speed is 70. Which means Golem is almost half as slow as the giant shell Pokemon. So, yeah, take that for whatever you will. But, yeah. Getting into the fight, this is going to be annoying because they both have the same name. So, on one hand, Golem from Monster Rancher should have an impressive showing here, due to the fact that, its wide variety of punch, kick, etc. moves, could easily be interpreted as fighting type moves. Some Golems are disciplined for the sake of peace. They don't necessarily know martial arts, but they do kind of, in the same way Tai Chi does, they do kind of, try to be disciplined. So if you interpret those as fighting moves, that would actually be a weakness of Golem from Pokemon. Also, the move Quake, is pretty much similar, or similar not maybe in power, but similar in, what it's accomplishing as something like Bulldozer Earthquake. So that would mean that Golem from Pokemon will also be weak to that. But that's where I think its advantages kind of end here, because for a few reasons, and again, I told you I wasn't going to use game mechanics or as the definitive reason, but this is relevant here. The way that accuracy works in the Monster Hunter universe is different from the way it works in Pokemon. And Golem from Monster Hunter is considered to have some of the worst accuracy in the game, if not the worst in some games. So, paired with its really bad speed, yes, it has moves that can do a lot of damage to Golem from Pokemon, who is by no means, fast either, but when you take that into consideration, the odds of landing a critical move is, become a lot less good, especially when Golem pretty much has access to almost anything that Golem from Pokemon, I should say, has pretty much the access to anything that Golem from Monster Rancher can do, but in a lot of cases more powerful if you take into consideration, again, opening up the entrances of caves or widening the entrances of caves is something that is usually done with dynamite. And as it was said, Golem can survive high-powered dynamite blasts without a scratch. So you take the most high-powered feat that I'm aware of, that a Golem, and I think this is from the anime, but we're not going strictly off the anime, we're just using it for reference. Take the most high-powered feat that Golem from Monster Rancher does, and the fact that it does nothing in universe when compared to, its most comparable real-life counterpart to Golem from Pokemon, and you understand that these two worlds are kind of operating on different levels here. And the fact that it's, not super accurate either is not doing it any favors. And as if the final nail in the coffin, I think Golem's strategy, Golem from Monster Rancher, its strategy generally in its competitive games, because it is actually a very good monster in most of the games, is pretty much as a one-shot or two-shot machine, right? It takes a lot of damage, it rolls for RNG, and then if it hits something, the thing it hits dies usually. And that is not something it's going to be able to do. Not that competitive strategy is necessarily, but, that's the thing Golem is, from Monster Rancher, is good at doing, is one-shotting things, and because of Sturdy, it literally cannot do that to Golem from Pokemon. So, I mean, yeah, it's got some cool things like creating tornadoes, but a tornado, I would say, generally would be considered a flying type move if translated to Pokemon, and Golem from Pokemon is actually resistant to that, and the type matchups aren't really the same thing in Monster Rancher, so I don't think anything Golem from Pokemon to do would have any sort of multiplier on it when compared to what it would do to Golem from Monster Rancher, but it's still pretty much all the same things that Golem from Monster Rancher can do, plus. So when the tank is outmatched in offense and defense and accuracy against the other tank, well, that's kind of a no-brainer. I know this is a very simple, maybe a little boring of a fight, but when you have two very straightforward, not fancy characters facing each other, it's pretty simple to determine which thing leads to their victory. So, yeah, if you haven't figured it out, I'm going to give this to Golem from Pokemon. But yeah, anyway, Verbal Engine 95. So yeah.